Gen Z is drowning in debt, and everyone thinks they know why. From viral spending habits to so-called lazy money management, this generation's been branded financially reckless. But what if that reputation isn't fair? Maybe the deck was stacked against them from the very start. Broken systems, bad timing, and economic crashes they played no part in. What chance do they actually have? On today's episode of The Infographic Show, we're revealing the real reason Gen Z is in so much debt. Before you can understand why Gen Z is struggling, you have to understand how they spend. They're often called the first true digital native generation, and it's not hard to see why. Millennials grew up with early home computers, a time when you had to go to one room of your house to get online. But Gen Z, they've had websites, apps, and video in their pocket from day one. They're used to doing everything with a smartphone, including paying. Most don't carry cash, and many don't even use credit cards. Instead, they have their debit cards or bank accounts linked directly to payment apps. Just click a button or scan a QR code and it's done. And if you don't have to think about money, is it even real? Digital purchases make impulse buying effortless. You scroll through a site, you spot something you like, you tap Buy Now, and it's already on its way to your door. The whole process takes seconds. You lose a frustrating level on one of those Match 3 games on your phone, and there's a way out. The game offers you a second chance for a $1.99 coin pack. It's only $2, right? Those small microtransactions and digital temptations are everywhere, and for a generation that's used to them, it feels second nature to buy now and worry about the bank account later. So is this the source of Gen Z's financial troubles? Not exactly. It's a complex issue that comes down to the geopolitical climate, the state of the job market, the price of, well, everything, and yes, Gen Z's spending habits too. But what is clear is that this generation is having a harder time finding its financial footing than anyone expected. And if you ask them, they have it harder than any generation before them. In fact, many of them feel the situation is hopeless, and the world is set up for them to fail, and they'd be better off rejecting the system altogether. To older generations, that sounds ridiculous. The greatest generation are heading off into the sunset, the youngest of them approaching 100 years old. But those with sharp memories remember the Great Depression hitting them just as they were hoping to begin their adult lives. It created years of poverty for the whole country, and the way out involved World War II. It wasn't as serious by a long stretch, but the 2008 market crash devastated the job prospects of millennials, as many of them were exiting high school and college, leaving them behind the eight ball. Many of them are still struggling to catch up and achieve the classic marks of adulthood, like a car, a house, and a family. So can Gen Z blame it on the world as well? Yes and no. The youngest generation of adults has been living in some pretty unsettled times, with wars raging around the world and politics getting nastier than ever. And that means far less willingness to compromise and keep the economy humming along. But there hasn't been any massive economic collapse like the previous generations experienced. Many millennials even think Gen Z needs to get it together. But there's been one major X factor that threw the entire generation for a loop. It didn't destroy the economy, but it sure felt like it. The name Gen Z could be subbed out for the COVID generation. While the pandemic affected people of every age, everyone remembers the toilet paper wars. It hit Gen Z right at a critical moment in their lives. Younger Gen Z likely lost some key parts of their schooling, being shunted off to remote classes for the best part of a year. If the timing was unlucky, some older Gen Zs might have missed out on the biggest celebrations of senior year for high school or graduation. And that has left many of them feeling like they are still stuck in limbo. COVID lockdowns are a distant memory now, but a lot of things didn't come back. You still can't find any 24/7 diners, and Walmart closes at 10, and there are fewer jobs than there used to be. Many companies went remote, laid off workers, and later replaced them, either by outsourcing overseas or hiring fewer people to do more for less pay. That's given Gen Z the impression that the market is stacked against them as they attempt to find their footing and to pay off all of their debt. And that debt just keeps on mounting. All kids will hear it at some point. You've got to do well in school so you can get into a good college, get a good job, and make an honest living. Except to Gen Z, that's looking more and more like a losing proposition. It's getting harder and harder to get a scholarship, and the price of college is mounting more than ever thanks to inflation. That puts college out of reach for many working-class families, leaving their kids with only one option: take out student loans to afford even the state schools, let alone elite ones. And that's a choice many wind up paying for long after they graduate. The government handles student loans in cooperation with private equity companies, but that federal connection doesn't make it friendlier to borrowers. In some cases, it's quite the opposite. Student loans aren't cheap. Interest rates are around 6.4% for undergrads and just under 8% for graduate students. That mounts up quickly. Many people who delay paying off their student debt find it has ballooned over time, forcing them to repay the same loan several times over. Even worse, student loans are one of the few types of debt that can't be wiped out through bankruptcy. Millennials hold the largest share of student debt, nearly 40% of all borrowers, while Gen X carries the highest balances. But Gen Z is catching up fast, and that is before most of them have even finished college. The average Gen Z borrower owes just under $23,000, without the debt having much time to accumulate interest. Already, 43.5% of Gen Zs aged 18 and older are carrying student debt. These numbers are only going to get worse as the generation gets older and has to make decisions about graduate school. And relief may not be coming. One of the biggest political issues for Gen Z has been student debt relief, picking up from the millennials. There are debates on just how far this should go. Some want interest canceled and government-owned debt to be forgiven. Meanwhile, others want the government to simply absorb all the existing debt and pay it off. Younger voters have continued to push for real student debt relief. Some federal efforts have been made, but shifts between administrations have produced mixed results, leaving many recent graduates unsure about their financial future. And more are asking if college is worth it. There was a time when getting a job meant stability. Someone's uncle knew a friend who ran this paper factory, and a new hire started at the ground floor checking for mistakes. A year later, they were supervising the paper checkers. Fast forward a few decades and they became the regional manager and retired with a comfortable pension. It was a simpler time. But those days are long gone, and that kind of career path is getting rarer every year. Now many Gen Zers are left wondering how they're supposed to gain experience for a good job when no one is willing to give them an entry-level one. And sometimes their degree can set them up to fail. Many Gen Zs choose liberal arts degrees that seemed like a great choice at the time. After all, when you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. But that may prove to be more prescient than expected. This is especially true for fields like literature or history, where students with a passion for the subject can study the greats and learn from professors who share that same enthusiasm. The problem is, there are relatively few jobs in those fields, with the most common one being a teacher or a professor in the same subject, which means many of these graduates are coming out of school and having to compete for a job against their mentor. One of the steadiest positions for people with an academic degree has always been in teaching. Generally, if you have a certain number of credits in one of the core academic fields, you could qualify for a teaching certification through a state program even if you didn't go through a formal teaching program. But a lot of struggling former academics take that route, which then means that this career can be very competitive. This is particularly true for those with English or history backgrounds, while math and science majors tend to have more job openings. Of course, just ask any teacher, this isn't necessarily a path to financial stability. For those who take the path of teaching, many of them find their student loan debt only seems to be growing. Many states don't offer high rates for teachers, especially those just starting out. And then there are the additional costs. Elementary school teachers, in particular, often find themselves shelling out for school supplies that aren't covered by the district. With Gen Z facing the highest average interest rates on student loans, many barely have the time to build a stable career before repayment starts. At least everything else is affordable, right? Let's face it, the cost of living is not great. Gen Z is facing the brunt of it as they enter the market at a painful time to have to make major purchases. One of the areas where this can be seen most clearly is in groceries, a regular purchase for everyone. When every item seems to be creeping up 10 to 20%, it adds up. In recent years, people have seen the cost of a bell pepper creep up close to $3 a pound. Family staples like ground beef can reach $7 a pound, making for some pretty expensive hamburgers. And that leaves Gen Z feeling up a creek. Millennials coined the word, adulting is hard. Suddenly, you're out of high school or college, and then you realize just how much your parents were handling every month. You've got to make ends meet, you've got to get to work, and that means transportation. One of the first major purchases many adult Gen Zers think about is a car, assuming their parents didn't buy them one at 16. But these days, even that feels increasingly out of reach. And you've got to look around the world to find the reasons. For one thing, the price of everything is going up, so inflation is beating up car prices pretty badly. But this specific item has some other issues, starting with the fact that many cars are made abroad. Even if they're made in the US, many of them use foreign components, and that means they're getting hit hard by the new tariffs. Surcharges designed to encourage companies to bring production back to the United States. Unless you're starting out with an expensive electric option, the first car is often a traditional gas guzzler. While gas prices aren't as high as they have been, they are certainly not low, averaging around $3 a gallon and highly subject to flare-ups in the Middle East. So it's no wonder that many Gen Zers are hitting the brakes. Gen Z has been eschewing many of the hallmarks of adult life, and the car is a big one. Not only can't many of them afford a personal vehicle, but they have concerns about the impact of fossil fuels on the climate. Many of them are enthusiasts about public transportation, but unfortunately the cities they live in, they don't always reciprocate. Some states like Pennsylvania have run into massive budget shortfalls for transit, leading to heavy cuts. New Jersey has had to raise prices on its buses and trains multiple times. Additionally, while public transportation can save money, many employers still frown on it, often asking candidates in the very first interview how they plan to get to work. And if the car market is a pipe dream for Gen Zs, the housing market is a flat-out nightmare. This generation is facing the same housing struggles as those before them. Only about 3% more own homes than the millennials did at the same age. And that was during a major financial crisis. Overall, they make up 3% of homeowners and have the lowest average income of any generation. Faced with rising prices and shrinking options, many have given up on finding affordable homes and are staying with their parents for as long as they can. Or they're getting into the rental market, which is its own bundle of trouble. Gen Zs moving out on their own for the first time are likely to seek a place where they can share it with 2 or 3 others, especially in the cities. But in many cities, rent prices are skyrocketing right alongside house prices. It can take up a huge chunk of the monthly budget, even with roommates, leaving little to nothing to put away for paying off student loans or saving for a house or a car. And there are many culprits. The boom in Airbnbs has taken over private residences for short-term rentals, and there is the private equity firms buying up all the houses en masse to sell at higher prices. With all this, is it any wonder plastic and apps look so appealing? It's easy to assume that Gen Z relies so heavily on credit cards and autopay functions because they are screen addicts with no sense of patience. But the reality is a lot more complicated than that. Many of them find themselves in debt by the time they start adulthood, and the amount can seem insurmountable even before the interest starts climbing. That leads many of them to see adding a little to that debt as no big deal. In for a penny, in for a pound, and the number keeps on climbing. Except they're in for a lot more than a pound. Gen Z's debt problem is real, and it's only getting worse. A poll by Talker Research for Newsweek found that in March 2025, the average Gen X member held personal debt of $53,000. The average millennial owed just over $59,000. Hefty sums, but nothing compared to the massive number of $94,000 owed by the average Gen Z member. This is almost entirely due to student loans at this point, but that average is only going to go up, as many of them take swings on cars and houses. And for Gen Z, it's all about keeping up with the Joneses. Gen Z is facing a level of pressure to keep up and conform that no generation has ever experienced before. While millennials joined Facebook early and could keep tabs on their old college friends, they weren't bombarded with content the way later generations are. Today, social media sites are ruled by algorithms where you don't just see the people you follow, you see what the site wants you to see. That includes countless influencers, each flaunting their lifestyle and trying to sell products. For Gen Z, it feels like they're constantly behind the curve, and money might be able to solve that. And so, another day, another purchase. But it's not all honest sellers. Unfortunately, Gen Z has one thing in common with the baby boomers on the other end of the age spectrum. They are both especially vulnerable to scams. The digital world has become exceptionally good at tricking people out of their money. From fake AI images that tug at your heartstrings to voice cloning schemes convincing someone a loved one is in danger, those scams are engineered to hit emotions so hard that skepticism disappears in an instant. And in some cases, people have lost everything. Gen Z is the most tech-savvy generation, but that can be a problem as well as an advantage. They tend to be very open to progress. And when something presents itself as an investment in the future, that's when that lack of financial literacy comes into play. The vast majority of people who have invested heavily in cryptocurrency are Gen Z, as are those who were into short-lived trends like NFTs. And sure, the apes gone meme made a lot of people laugh when NFT bros lost their collection of expensive JPEGs, but it is a serious problem. It is one that has cost people their entire life savings when they lost a Bitcoin password or a country that was hosting a server farm shut down their internet. And all of that turns out to be a no-win scenario. If you ask the average Gen Z, they lost the game before they even started playing. They got to a world where college was more expensive than ever and no one was hiring. Many of them feel like the job market just doesn't want their skills. with reports of people getting rejected by hundreds of jobs without ever even getting an interview. After all, how can you pay off your debt if no money is coming in? Many older critics of Gen Z say that they act like money isn't even real, and many Gen Zers are starting to agree. They're asking who set this system up and why does it have to stay this way? Is it fair to expect them to track every dollar and save for debt payments when the jobs they need are being shipped overseas and replaced by AI? With rising prices and limited opportunities, can anyone really blame them for not wanting to spend their lives playing catch-up? But time comes for us all. Millennials are finding this out the hard way. One day, you're young and full of hope, trying to find your way in the world, and the next you are 42 and your back hurts. Gen Z has been kicking many decisions down the road due to financial stress, but with each passing year, it's only getting harder for them to buy a home, afford a car, or start a family, especially with all that student debt hanging over them. Gen Z isn't waiting for a financial windfall, it's waiting for a big social change that will make the economy more hospitable for them. But they may be waiting a long time. There are plenty of big barriers in the way of massive economic and social overhaul, and that has led many older generations to wonder why Gen Z can't get it together. After all, they did, mostly. Even millennials are getting into the act of punching down, but the idea that Gen Z is nothing but a bunch of lazy whiners is missing the point. All the past generations struggled, but the world was working in their direction at one point. Gen Z didn't have that chance, and so the future is more and more uncertain. The older Gen Zs have about 40 years to retirement, and that is not even a glimmer in their mind right now. Saving for retirement isn't going to cross their minds when there is so much else to be concerned with. But right now, the entire generation is falling behind the curve, and there is only so much time to catch up before the Gen Alpha iPad kids graduate and enter the workforce, and they have probably never even seen a $20 bill. Gen Z might be drowning in debt, but every era has faced its own challenges. Watch Every Generation Explained in 10 minutes to see how each shaped the world we live in today, or click on this video instead.